This video was sponsored by Skillshare. If you think about it, The Legend of Zelda is a lot like a bowl of cereal. Each entry in this series is someone's favorite, you know? We've got Ocarina of Time, Majora's Munch, Wheat Waker, Twilight Pops, Skyward Smacks, and we were really excited to see what the next flavor would be. And Eiji Aonuma and the Zelda team thought, let's mix this up a little. So they went on a grand quest, figuring out what they could do to make the greatest bowl of Zelda cereal yet. And in 2017, they released, without a shadow link of a doubt, the most revolutionary Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild tasted nothing like Zelda games before it, including the cartridge. Instead of just inventing another new flavor of the same Ocarina of Time formula, Breath of the Wild is almost like a renovated NES Zelda, but with a newer, different milk. Traditions were thrown out the window to fully realize the new scope of this game. This wasn't just another new flavor of Zelda, but more so a new texture for Zelda. However, this puts Zelda's future in a super exciting spot, because now future games can develop what Breath of the Wild introduced, take inspiration from older Zelda games, or entirely new ideas for the series. What could The Legend of Zelda look like in 10 years' time? Are we gonna get traditional dungeons? Are we still gonna be in Hyrule? Is Link still gonna be wearing blue? What colors is Tuna gonna be? I need to know! It's time for us to begin this fiber-intensive quest. So you know what? Let's just double down on the whole cereal analogy, and let's just say that the Zelda right now is made up of 4 pieces, 4 elements of the Zelda experience. We have progression, we have setting, we have mechanics, and we have art style. Old 3D Zelda progression was dungeon, next dungeon, plot development, then 2 to 6 more dungeons, and then the final boss. But Breath of the Wild said, no, go wherever. Do as much or as little shrines and divine beasts as you like. Be fully prepared to go to the final boss, or go in with nothing but your pants. It's really up to you. So Breath of the Wild had 120 shrines and 4 divine beasts. But in my opinion, even though finding the shrines could have a super fun puzzle attached to it, there was just so many of them, it kind of just turned into a checklist. And aesthetics wise, the divine beasts and the shrines felt very samey. We didn't get as much fun theming as we have in previous Zelda titles. So what if instead of having 120 shrines and 4 Rubik's Cubes, we get 30 to 50 dungeons? But just like the shrines, the game doesn't push you to do them. You as the player discover them yourself. You can get little hints like a rumor from a wandering traveler, and before you know it, you find this incredibly cool dungeon. Now these dungeons wouldn't be crazy big, but there'd be a nice balance between the dungeons from previous Zelda titles and shrines. Now I completely understand why they made shrines the way they did. They stuck out on purpose for a player to discover them, and they're quick enough where you could do one on the bus. But I feel like more specific dungeons would be so much more immersive and exciting. Instead of them all having Sheikah theming like we got with shrines, we could have the dungeon match the environment around it. But maybe so the developers don't have to make 50 unique designs for every dungeon, we could have 5 or so themes that are reused. Not only does this system give us more unique dungeons, but it also makes this idea realistically feasible. And the theme selection could be something like forest, ice, fire, futuristic, and water for a laugh. Previous Zelda games always had a very shiny setting, traveling across the seas, alternate realities, a world above the sky, but even with how different it was, Breath of the Wild is actually surprisingly traditional when it comes to its setting. I mean, it does have this somber isolation of a world that once was, and a battle of nature versus technology. But then there's also ninjas who love bananas. This game had a lot that was different, so keeping it as Zelda as possible when it comes to the setting makes a lot of sense. Another thing Breath of the Wild has is a lot of references to old games to help alleviate the new. But because of the new, it does this with very little canonical sense. These familiar locations and characters are more so just a fun reference for Zelda fans. But since this game was brewing with so much reinvention, it may have not even felt like a Zelda game without these references. So for a future post-Breath of the Wild Zelda game, why don't we have a new setting? Like an ice age. Maybe hundreds of years have passed since Breath of the Wild and its sequel, and we see how the different races have evolved for frozen living. Maybe the Gorons and Zoras have created a tribe together, living near underwater volcanoes. Maybe Koroks have become thoughtless husks, lost souls without a Deku tree. Wind Waker did something very similar with the Rito evolving from the Zora, and the Korok from the Kokiri. Wait, so what's going on here, Zelda? Maybe we could even have a similar character to the hero Spirit from Twilight Princess, where the Link we played as in Breath of the Wild is a mental character that's still around, being powered by Sheikah technology. Oh wait, oh my god, what if Link was a monk? When it comes to game mechanics like puzzle solving, the older 3D Zelda games feel so limiting after playing Breath of the Wild. Since you get your items one at a time and the only real physics in these games is chucking pots, every puzzle or conundrum you find yourself in always has one answer. Google. But the combination of Breath of the Wild's physics system and chemistry system gives so much freedom to experiment with every puzzle you come across. These systems in place allow something known as multiplicative gameplay. The rules of the world and the tools Link has lets the player experiment and gives them so much more choices to problem solve. So there's more time playing and less time scratching your head and then giving up and watching a walkthrough. And as much as I'd like to see an old item like the hookshot returning, I'd love to see what they could add to the physics and chemistry system. We could get something like gravity modifiers, which would allow us to have proper underwater gameplay. And this is where you could use the new rune, the light rune. And this rune allows the player to make entities and objects weightless. Not only would this be really fun for underwater puzzle solving, but it also make it hilarious to use on enemies. Taking the physics system of Breath of the Wild and making gravity a more important element to think about could give us so many creative and fun ideas. And if there's a gravity mechanic, Mario Galaxy X Breath of the Wild, Link's going to space, best game in the world. Now, back in the day when I was 5 months old, there was an event called Space World 2000, and Nintendo showed off this GameCube demo of Zelda. Zelda fans were ecstatic to see the most realistic rendition of a series yet. It then comes next year with Space World 2001, where they showed this, and a lot of people were very angry. Having just been teased what everyone wanted, the reveal of Wind Waker definitely angered people. So when it came to the next Zelda game, Nintendo thought, alright, let's do the polar opposite, and then Twilight Princess made people literally cry when it was announced. But in both games since Twilight Princess, Nintendo has been slowly inching back to our beloved Toon Link. I mean, when Skyward Sword came out, people said, oh, it's a combination of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. And then when Breath of the Wild came out, people were saying, oh, it's a combination of Skyward Sword and Wind Waker. And if we continue this trajectory and we get an art style in between Breath of the Wild and Wind Waker, I think the best reference we have to that is Link in Mario Kart 8. And I think seeing a full game with this art style could be really fun. So that might be the most probable next art style, but what if we get something a bit more crazy? What if we got a game with a similar style to Twilight Princess and have that Wii U demo actually come to fruition? Or finally bring back Toon Link in a game that isn't top down? Or they decide that Breath of the Wild was so successful that this is the same Link we're gonna do forever and ever, and we'll never see Toon Link again!
Ah! Oh! Donkey! Donkey! Wake up!
This video was sponsored by Skillshare. Have you got an itch? An itch to learn something new? Because Skillshare is here to scratch that itch. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes to learn, explore, and discover. Want to learn how to draw? Skillshare. Want to learn how to make those drawings move with animation? Skillshare again. If there's anything in particular which you've really wanted to learn for a while, Skillshare is here to help. But if you're not that type of person and don't really have a particular skill which you want to learn in mind, then just check out this productivity masterclass by Thomas Frank. All of his classes on Skillshare are super digestible. If you feel like the days are going by way too quickly and you want to get more out of your time, this is the course for you. The last time I checked, pausing time hasn't been invented yet, so watching this course is the best equivalent we've got. If you're even remotely interested, make sure you click the link at the top of the description before someone else does, because the first 1,000 people to click get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. And after that, it's just $10 a month. Checking out Skillshare will better yourself, and it'll also be a great way of helping support the channel. Again, big ups to Skillshare. You guys are great. Cheers, lads. Now, The Legend of Zelda just celebrated its 35th anniversary, and Breath of the Wild sequel is still pretty much a mystery to us. And if we're lucky, maybe we can have some of these ideas we discussed in the sequel, or if not, games to follow. But no matter where the series goes from now, I'm here for it. This series continues to surprise me and bring me so much happiness and inspiration, and I wouldn't deny it being my favorite series of all time for that. And I am so excited to see what the future of this series will be. As long as we get a gruesome amiibo. If we don't get a gruesome amiibo, we're living in a dark timeline. Oh, if you got to the end, thanks. Actually, that's pretty cool. I just want to say big thanks to everyone you see on screen, including my secondary artist, Jackademia, and my secondary editor, Dan Garney. They really helped me get this video out in time, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. Also, thank you to everyone you see on screen, thanks to Patreon. If you would like to help support the channel and help make the videos, you can go check out that. And apart from that, thanks everyone! Have a happy 35th, Zelda.